Well, good evening. Can anybody out there hear me? Somebody type in 10-4. Okay. I like to give you a little bit of a advance notice that I'm going to check the sound because sometimes if I suddenly come on without any warning, scares the heck out of people for some reason. So looks like looks like we're up to 5 total. I think one of those is myself, so 4 students so far. So we're going to wait a few minutes. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a couple of seconds while I check my I'm going to check my emails in a second here and see how that's going. For some reason, somebody had audio there, and see. On your end, who is it? Maybe Kristen. Okay, let me. Okay, I think I've got you muted now. So I'm going to check my emails just in a second and make sure that nobody's trying to get a hold of me over there on email, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back again, I hope. However, I'm going to need somebody to tell me that they can hear me. So can you hear me again? Somebody type in, yep. Okay, that's a good sign there. It looks like Joe joined us, and we're still waiting on a few people here. So I am going to hold off just a second, and looks like Alita and Joe and Kristen and Ryan and Tricia so far. So a few of you looks like from York, and a couple of Lancaster people as well. So we'll get started in just a few minutes. We might have a small group. We might have more people joining in a few minutes. I have a feeling because I'm doing this so far in advance, some people are just going to opt for the recording, and rather than hello, Allie. Good to see you. I'm a little rusty with my controls here for a second. Just trying to see how things are working here. Okay, looks good. Hello, Kim. Welcome. And getting some more people joining us, which is good. I'm kind of hearing somebody's mic. Oh, there's, okay, let me get that taken care of. As you join, I'm muting your microphones so that I'm the only one talking, which leads to a little bit less confusion. So it looks like we have 7 students here, and myself. And before I forget to do it, I'm going to actually start the recording. So hold off on just hold on for a second here. Let me see what I want to do here. So I think I need to stop sharing for a second while nope, wait a minute, here we go. Let me do this, and oh, it looks like I am recording already, so that's fine. And let me get back to where we were before. Okay. And I'm looking at my watch. Looks like about 6:05. So I think I'm going to kind of get started. Let me just look at, try to bring up the chat here on my screen for a second. And does anybody have any questions they want to ask me before we get started? Actually, that might be a good place to see here. Anything on somebody's mind? Just a reminder, you can use your 3x5 card with handwritten notes, just one, just like we've been using for all our other exams as well. And be able to do that for the final as well. Just keep in mind, I have people from all sections, 6 different sections might be participating. So if somebody says, our test is Wednesday, isn't it? It may not be for you. It may be that you're in a different section. So the final schedules are posted on the HACC webpage if you are uncertain as to when our exam is. I don't know them by heart, I'll admit that, and I don't have my records here. I'm actually at home, so I'm hoping that everybody remembers or wrote down when I said our exams would be. For the last week, I've been putting it up on the board, so I won't be able to help you tonight on when the exam is. However, if you want to email me, I can easily get back to you tomorrow as to when our exam is. Now, if you're listening to this as a recording, that is going to be a challenge depending on when you're listening to this recording. So anyway, as usual, I'm going to pull up some multiple choice questions that kind of talk about important concepts that I think I might want you to know for the exam. I do have, well, we got a couple more people here. Welcome. I don't have any questions from chat 14. And let me see who we got here. Hello, Sarah and Johanna, it looks like. Oops. And yeah, okay. Welcome to the session here. And there might be some times tonight where you hear me sort of pause, and it's because for some reason I'm having to mute people's microphones individually, and it's, I don't know if you can kind of hear sometimes in the background some noise, but it's in my headphones, which really distracts the heck out of me. So I'll be taking care of that from time to time. So anyway, I will pull up a question and then give you a chance to vote on what answer you think you want to give. And then we'll take a look at how people answered and clarify any misconceptions and stuff like that. So without further ado, let me try to pull up a question here. And here's our first question. Which personality structure is completely unconscious and consists of instincts? And let me pull up a poll for you so you can see. Now you should have that on your screen that you can, oops, let me launch the poll. And you should be able to register your answer on your screen right now. So it looks like 1 of 9 have voted so far. That's a good thing. So go ahead and vote for your favorite answer by pressing the bubble on for the answer that you wish to choose. And looks like we have about 4 people out of 9 have voted so far. So I'm going to wait a few more seconds here. But yeah, which personality structure is unconscious? Sorry, I've got windows sort of covering up my question here. Okay, looks like we're up to 6 people have put in an answer. So let me end the poll and let you see the results. And as you should be able to see on your screen, now if you're watching as a recording, I don't think the poll shows up, but 83% went for answer number 2. And if we check the board, survey says, yes, the id is the correct answer. If you remember, who was it? Freud said that the id, ego, and superego were parts of our personality, and the id and ego might be a little bit unconscious, but the id sort of, what is it, energy, I think I described that as I was describing it on the board. There is no such thing as a super id. So that was kind of a what we call a distractor kind of answer. So, okay, let's take a look at another question here and see how we can do. And question is, based on Freud's view of personality, parents who reward their children for good behavior and punish them for bad behavior help their children to develop what? So you can pick an answer here. What do parents who reward their children for good behavior and punishing them for bad behavior, what do they help their kids develop? Is it 1, defense mechanisms, id, superego, or ego? And I think probably we can, well, defense mechanisms aren't necessarily something that parents help their kids develop. So, and in fact, nobody's answered number 1, which is good, but it looks like we have 7 people have put in an answer. So I think I'm going to pull up the answer here. 7, oh, we're up to 8 now. And most people, as you can see, most people answered number 3, superego. And let me show you that that is in fact the correct answer. Kids are not born with a superego. Those are the rules of society. They have to learn them somehow. And parents who reward their kids for good stuff and punish them for bad help their kids develop that superego, according to Freud. Now, like I said, we don't necessarily um, put a lot of stock in what Freud said anymore, but I think he still had important things for us to look at when he described our personality: id, ego, superego. So, okay, let me give us a new poll here and see if I can pull up another question. Yeah, this one's from the Big Five. Which of the Big Five personality traits is associated with traits such as being good-natured, trusting, and helpful? So which one of these would be the good-natured, trusting, and helpful? Openness, agreeableness, neuroticism, consciousness. That should be conscientiousness, I guess. I need to correct the spelling on that, I just noticed. Or extroversion. Which one would be the Big Five personality trait that's just, good-natured, trusting, and helpful? What do you think? Looks like we got 2 out of 9. Now we're up to 3. Oh, now we're up to about 5 out of 9. I've put in a response. And some of you may have, for extra credit, done the Big Five. And it looks like we're up to, what do we have? 6 out of 9. So let's see, 7 out of 9. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results for those of you who are here live. And as you can see, those of you who are here live, that 3 out of I think 3 out of 7 went for extroversion. And let me show you what the correct answer is. It is actually agreeableness. Kind of means good-natured and go with the flow. So the one of you who picked that, congratulations. You know, for the rest of us, openness to, what is that, new experiences. That's what number 1 is. 3, neuroticism or nervousness or anxiety. 4 would be conscientiousness, doing a good job. And number 5, extroversion, meaning outgoing and I guess probably good-natured, but there are probably some extroverted people who are outgoing who maybe aren't quite as helpful and good-natured as we would want them to be. So the best answer, I think, for that one is agreeableness. I think you're going to want to know a little bit about those 5 different characteristics of personality. That's from chapter 13. So just kind of take a look at that in your notes and in the book. And let me give us a new poll here. And should have cleared the results there. And let's see. I see somebody else just joined us here. So let me bring up another question. And this question: which of the following methods would most likely be used by a psychoanalyst to assess personality? People like Freud, what kind of personality test do you think they might give? Would it be a projective test, an interview, direct observation, an inventory, or case study? What are they going to measure personality? What are they going to use to measure personality? And if you remember, there are a couple of different types of tests that I put in your notes. And I'm trying to keep my eye on the chat to see if there's any questions that people are wanting to pose there and not seeing anything, which is good. So we're up to, looks like 4 out of 10 have put in a vote so far. Psychoanalyst, think Freud. And we're up to 6 out of 10, 7. So I think I'll end the poll and let you see that there was a tie. The tie was between number 2, interview, and number 3, direct observation. And let me show you the results. And actually, the correct answer really would be projective tests. Psychoanalysts would be using that ink blot test probably to assess people's personality. I think I've mentioned in class that there aren't many psychoanalysts around anymore, probably in big cities. We wouldn't be likely to find one in Lancaster or York. Um, it's just not a sought after kind of service. But in Philadelphia and other big cities, you might find a pretty active group of psychoanalysts who do psychoanalysis. You have to go 3 times a week, though, for about two years maybe in order to get it done, and it's pretty darn expensive. So that's probably part of the reason why there aren't too many around anymore. Okay, let me relaunch the poll. And let's see if I can bring another question for you here. Which is correct? I was just talking about this ink blot test. Which is correct? Ink blot tests are good indicators of underlying personality traits, true or false? Yeah, looks like a few people have answered already. This one's more for fun than anything. It's not going to be on the exam. I mean, you definitely want to know what an ink blot test is, but looks like we have about 6 out of 10 have put in an answer. So I'm going to let you see how people voted here. And most of you, 4 out of the 6, went for number 1, true. And a couple of you went for false. And the answer is kind of tricky. I think true. In the hands of an experienced examiner, ink blot tests could be a good indicator of underlying personality traits, but in general, it's not a great way of assessing personality. In fact, let me get back to the chat here a second. Does anybody remember I gave you an objective personality test that we use a lot? And does anybody remember what that objective test was? Or maybe you have your notes. You could type in the chat area either its initials or the whole thing, or you could just take a nap. Kristen's got the quick fingers there, it looks like. Yeah, the MMPI-2, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. I think I showed you the profile of Charles Manson and Jeffrey Dahmer. And it's a very good objective test. And I think I said objective tests are like true or false, multiple choice. And my biases, it's objective because it's a fair test. Let's put it that way. If I don't like you, I can't alter the results. So yeah, good quick fingers there, Kristen. Okay, let me see what else I've got here. relaunch the poll here so you can vote again. And you should have a fresh poll in front of you. And let's see what I've got. Okay. Which of the following is enough for saying that a behavior is a psychological disorder? If you remember, I gave you, I think, the 4 Ds, and they're kind of in here a little bit. But what one is enough to say that a behavior is a disorder? Some of the other ones might not be quite complete. But which one, just by itself, you can say, boy, that person does have a disorder. I see somebody has finally put in an answer there. A couple of you. So we're moving forward a little bit. We have 3 out of 11 of you have put in an answer. That's good. Looks like people are consistently picking the same answer, which is good as well. So we'll let it go for just a few more seconds. This question is from chapter 15, and after I show you the answer, I'm going to mention a couple of other things. Looks like we're up to 4 out of 11. This is a hard type of question. I really don't like this type of question, but I picked it in order to make a point. So it looks like either 7 people must have died at the wheel because they're not answering, or something happened to our reception here. But I'm going to cut it off and let you see at least how we're up to 5 people answered now. So I'm going to cut it off, let you see the results, and you should be able to see that 4 of you went for answer number 4, the behavior causes an inability to function from day to day. And 1 of you answered behavior causes emotional distress. And let me show you the correct answer here, which is number 4, in fact. The behavior causes an inability to function from day to day. And when I was explaining about disorders, I said, if something is uncommon, if it's not something the average person does, that may suggest that somebody has a disorder. But then I used myself as an example that I write with my left hand, about 10% of us do, and that doesn't mean I have a disorder. If the behavior goes against social norms, I used to have my hair down to my shoulders. That kind of went against social norms, and it isn't enough to say that I have a disorder. Behavior causes subjective discomfort. Well, what's a good example of that? Sometimes speaking in public for me can be a little bit uncomfortable, and number 5 is pretty similar. Behavior causes emotional distress when I have to speak in front of maybe a large group or something, but it doesn't necessarily mean I have a disorder. But this number 4, the behavior causes an inability to function from day to day. Yeah, that's enough just by itself to say that somebody has a disorder. What I skipped over is that I didn't in this review include any questions from chapter 14. And chapter 14, if you remember, was on stress, PTSD, I think we mentioned, and some of the signs of PTSD, sleep problems, flashbacks. Some people feel numb, etc. You want to know a few things about PTSD. And there was something in there that I think it was 3 stages of a reaction to stress. And for one of my classes, I know I forgot to write the title of that. Hans Selye came up with it, and he entitled it the General Adaptation Syndrome. And yeah, I'm trying to type it in here. Whoops, can't type today. The General Adaptation Syndrome. And it had 3 stages. I don't know if anybody remembers any of those 3 stages. Maybe we can use the chat area. Does anybody remember any of the 3 stages of, yeah, there's one, Alita. Alarm, resistance, yeah. And there's another one, exhaustion. Quick on the fingers there, good typing. And yeah, Celia said that our initial reaction is alarm, and if we're coping well, we're doing resistance, but boy, the straw that broke the camel's back can create exhaustion. So I didn't include, like I said, any questions from chapter 14, but there still may be information from that chapter that you do want to be aware of. Okay, let's take a look at, whoops, let me give you a fresh poll to answer, and I'll give you a fresh question here. And the question is, biological models for explaining psychological disorders may look at all of the following except, now which one of these 5 things here is not looking at biology? That's basically what this question is asking. So that's why I put except in capital letters. Remember, on the exam, if I put something in bold print, it means I'm trying to pull your attention to it. And capital letters is kind of the same thing. So I think we can recognize many of these are biological things that could cause psychological disorders, but there's one that is not biological. And so far, 4 out of 11 have picked the correct answer. So let's see if anybody else is going to pick. We're up to 6 now. 6 out of 11, that's not too bad. Just trying to see if anybody's still awake out there. And we'll see if we can get one more person. I feel like a pledge program here. We just need one more pledge to hit our goal of $300,000. There we go. And let me end the poll and help you see how people answered. Share the results with you. And as you can see, 6 of you picked number 5, and 1 of you picked number 3. Genetics, neurotransmitters, brain damage, and effects of toxins on brain development, those are all biological factors. So, in fact, let me bring it up. Parenting styles and their effects on the psychological development of children, that's not a biological kind of thing. That's a environmental, or what do we call that? Nurture. If you remember, nature is sort of your biology, your yeah, genetics and stuff, and nurture is your environmental factor. So number 5 is the correct answer for that question. Okay. Got a new poll ready for you. And let me see if I can pull up another question. There we go. Oh, this one should be easy. I've talked about it a lot. This manual provides a comprehensive list of more than 400 mental disorders grouped into 17 broad categories. It's abbreviated as what? What is this called? That manual that lists all of our psychological disorders. Showed it to you in class. It's purple. at least if you buy the book. It is available to you guys online under those databases A to Z. And um, looks like 8 out of 11, 72% of us have voted. And that only took a minute. And so let you see how people have answered. And as those of you who are here live can see, number 3 got 7 votes. The DSM-5, which is in fact the correct answer. That's that diagnostic and statistical manual that we use to well, classify behaviors, and it tells us who's most likely to get those behaviors, and how often who's most likely to get a disorder, and how often do people have it. 10% of the population has anxiety or something. It tells us all of that, so we kind of accurately diagnose what somebody has. Okay, let's relaunch a poll here and see how we're doing for another question. Ooh, this is a specific disorder. Anxiety that seems to have no real source. It consists of excessive worrying and is associated with physical symptoms such as difficulty concentrating, irritability, and sleeping problems. What's that called? Is it panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, phobia, agoraphobia, or generalized anxiety disorder? And it looks like 4 out of 11 have put in a response so far. I'm going to give you a few questions like this, where I do give you symptoms, and you then would need to look at the possible disorders here and decide which one the symptoms are representing. It's almost like being on House. And, they did all sorts of tests, found that there was lots of worrying and hard to concentrate, irritable, sleeping problems. And you then have to play psychologist and figure out what it is. Hopefully I've taught you what the major disorders are so that you can um, pick it out from a whole list here. So looks like we're up to 7 out of 11 people have answered. So I'm going to let you see that most of you, 6 out of 7, picked generalized anxiety disorder, which is in fact the correct answer. Panic disorder, that's where people have a lot of panic attacks. Several of us, I think, in each one of my sections, including myself, have experienced a panic attack where you find it hard to breathe, you feel like you're going to lose control, you're sweating, your heart's beating out of your chest. That's panic attack, which could be part of panic disorder. Obsessive compulsive disorder. I think we all saw Bill, the guy who collected rubber bands and pennies and what was the other thing? Oh, napkins. That's right. A phobia. We talked about phobias in class. That's an intense fear that's probably out of proportion to what the thing deserves. I told you about the guy who somebody called 911. He was screaming because there was a spider, arachnophobia. There's a spider in his apartment, and probably not a reason to start screaming. You just get out a baseball bat or whatever you need to get rid of that spider. Agoraphobia, fear of the wide open spaces, or crowds can sometimes be a bit of a sign of agoraphobia as well. So those are 5 different disorders that I know I covered all of them actually in class. Okay, let's take a look at another question here. I accidentally crossed it. Can I push it up again? Do we have to know? Here's a question. I'm looking at the chat here. Do we have to know the thematic apperception test that's in the textbook? No, it's actually it's a projective test, and that picture that's in the textbook is actually one of the pictures that we do use in the thematic apperception test. Basically, the person is asked to tell a story, what's happening in the picture, what led up to it, and how does it turn out. And I used to use that. I used to evaluate juveniles after they were maybe convicted of crimes or after they were sent to the juvenile hall in Lancaster. It was called Barnes Hall at the time. And that was one of the tests, the thematic apperception test that I did give to just kind of find out how they'd answer, you know, and again, the thought is they project their personality onto it. So it's a form of personality test, but no, you don't really have to know anything specifically about it. I'm hoping, Ryan, that the poll will come back up for you again. Let's see if I can pull up another question now. Here we go. The presence of repeated, often disturbing thoughts is known as what? Disturbing thoughts, repeated, unwanted thoughts. I know I gave you that in your notes. So what's the best answer there? Repeated, unwanted thoughts. It looks like 5 out of 11 of you have put in a response so far, up to 6. I'll wait just a few seconds more just to see if we can push one more person to put in an answer, take a chance. Remember, I can't tell who answered in what particular way, so it's okay to sort of guess, but when it comes time for the exam, you definitely don't want to be guessing. And okay, we got our 7th one, and let me end the poll and share the results with you. And as you can see, 5 out of 7 of you picked number 3, which is obsession. And that is, in fact, the correct answer. If you remember, Bill, he said one time he passed over a penny, and he thought and thought about that all day. His day was ruined because he obsessed about that that penny. And I think I described the father who was driving to Disney and started obsessing on whether or not he had locked the front door. And he just kept obsessing. And the only way to get rid of that obsession was to turn around, drive back from Virginia to Pennsylvania. And he, in fact, found that he had locked the front door. And, you know, he just couldn't tolerate that discomfort. I didn't mention this. One of the therapies for people with obsessive compulsive disorder is exposure therapy. I did describe that in your notes. But let's say somebody has a contamination or fear of dirt, and the idea with treatment would be to put a little bit of dirt on their finger and keep them from washing it off right away. They have to just kind of be exposed to that dirt for a little while, and then kind of like those baby steps I described, we maybe lengthen the amount of time that they have that dirt on their finger, or maybe we put a little larger quantity of dirt on their hands using exposure therapy to help the person see that they actually can tolerate dirt. Let me think. Hoarding. Maybe we can get them to discard something, and that's exposure therapy. Throw it away, and be at peace with it. We have to, and like I said, it's called, for obsessive compulsive disorder, exposure and response prevention therapy for OCD. It's very effective. It's a behavior therapy, and it works pretty well for people. In fact, I'll put a plug in for Psych 213. I do show a successful treatment of a woman who has OCD in Psych 213, and they use exposure therapy and response prevention. Okay, let me relaunch the poll here. Again, I'm still. Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you, Ryan. Just check the chat area to see if anybody had posted anything. So, okay, let me give you another question here. We have a fresh poll. And, oh, okay. This one may not be as easy because it's actually dealing with something they took out of our textbook of sorts. Which type of schizophrenia, and I think I mentioned in class that we used to classify 5 different types. There they are listed there. Which type of schizophrenia is associated with frequent hallucinations, inappropriate affect, meaning the emotion that a person shows just doesn't match the situation. You tell them their dog died and they start laughing. It's just a mismatch of their emotion to the situation. And maybe disorganized speech is part of the symptoms as well. Sorry, I had to mute my microphone for a second while I sneezed, and hopefully that didn't come through. It looks like we have 4 people have answered out of 11, and so actually I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this question. Let me show you the results here. Yeah, it looks like we're up to 5 people answered. And if you're a good test taker, actually, maybe you noticed the fact that there's the word disorganized in the question and disorganized down here in the answers. And 3 of you may have picked number 3 on that basis, because that is, in fact, the correct answer. And I think part of the reason why I highlighted this was something that I did cover in class. Catatonic is those people who aren't moving. And I think I said they can be like a Gumby doll with that waxy flexibility that you can move their limbs and they hold that position, kind of like a wax figure would. Paranoid, they're highly suspicious of people, disorganized, just lots of hallucinations. Hallucinations being, as I mentioned, seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling things that aren't really there. We saw, who was it, Johnny Nash, John Nash's son, talking about seeing things that weren't there. I think he said they were like shadowy figures, and that's a part of disorganized schizophrenia. And the other 2 are not necessarily real important to know much about. Okay, let me see where we're at. I'll give you a fresh poll here. And let's see if I have another question. Yeah. This one, I guess I described several personality disorders. Which of the following are symptoms of most people with antisocial personality, except, again, not necessarily the greatest kind of question. I usually don't put this type of question on the exam, but a person with antisocial personality disorder which one of these aren't they likely to have? They're likely to have all of the other ones except what? It's kind of a trick question. I'll explain that in a few minutes, I think. Looks like we have 3 out of 11. I think people are taking their time with this one, probably because it's kind of a crappy question. And I'll explain why in just a few minutes. But we have, looks like 6 out of 11 have put in an answer. That seems to be sort of our top number there. Every once in a while we get a 7th person to answer. But I think I'll just end the poll, and we got our 7th person, just in under the wire. And actually, I should be sharing the results right now. And as you can see, most of you voted for number 3, superficial charm. And the actual answer, though, most people with antisocial personality disorder show all except killing people without feeling guilty. And the point I was trying to make was that antisocial personality disordered people, most of the time they do these first 4. Persistent lying. I mean, they'll lie just to get away with things. They don't feel guilt for stealing. They are charming. Ted Bundy. Anybody remember Ted Bundy? He was a very intelligent guy. He was executed as a serial killer. And he would take women out and basically murder them. Very, very charming kind of guy. Impulsive. People with antisocial personality disorder will gamble or have sex or go drinking, do drugs, just on impulse. Hey, it seemed like a good idea at the time. They just kind of make impulsive decisions. But most of them don't kill other people. They really don't. That's sort of a rare kind of characteristic for somebody with antisocial personality disorder. But the other 4 things, they definitely will engage in those kinds of things. So that was one of the personality disorders I put in your notes. I think there were 3 other ones. Narcissistic. I think I tried to remain out of politics, but I think some of you may have known what I wasn't saying. I also mentioned borderline personality disorder, people who harm themselves. And also the one that wasn't in the textbook, schizoid personality disorder, Mr. Spock, people who don't necessarily feel a desire to be around people, but they, and they don't express a whole lot of emotion, kind of like Mr. Spock as well. So, okay, let me pull up the poll again and see how we're doing. Ooh, which is correct here? This is sort of a fun one, I think. The insanity defense is rarely used. Is that true or false? Got 5 answers real quickly here because this is a pretty simple question. Yeah, it looks like we're up to 6 already about the insanity defense. It's not used a whole lot. True or false? It looks like we're stuck on 6 again. So I think I'm going to end the poll. And we got our 7th one just at the last minute. And let me show you that most people answered that that's false. And actually, the answer is true. Only in about 5% of cases is the insanity defense used to try to get out of a a crime. And even in those 5% of the times that people plead insanity or try to establish that they were insane, it usually doesn't work. I think I described the New York case 2 weeks ago of a woman who stabbed 2 children to death. She was a nanny, and she tried to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. She did use it, um, but it was unsuccessful. She was found guilty of some degree of murder, I believe. So it doesn't work to use that as a plea. Okay, let's see. I can relaunch the poll here, but I'm kind of wondering, let's see. Oh goodness, everybody's going to get this one correct. Schizophrenia is the same as split personality. Everybody votes on this one. Come on, we're at 6. We're at 6 out of 11. Come on, no chickens. There, we're up to 7. Everybody answered in the same direction, which makes me very gratified that I may have taught you something over the course of this semester. By the way, have I mentioned reinforcement? Okay, it's an old joke. But definitely you guys learned something from this. I'll share the results, although I shouldn't have to. Thanks, Sarah. You made my day. If anybody sees Sarah's comment of, yeah, what's reinforcement? Yeah, I think I'll have to check the textbook to see what that means. So anyway, all 7 of you said that schizophrenia it's false. It's not the same as split personality. And what is that disorder, by the way? Anybody remember the name of that disorder? If somebody does have more than one personality present in that, yeah, dissociative identity. Good, quick dissociative identity disorder. Yeah, you guys have learned something. And, often the result of trauma, I think for some of you, I may have described the patient who was trying to kill me, or I thought was going to kill me, and how I thought I dissociated and sort of was out of body for a brief period of time, and that probably, yeah, it was an example of dissociation. So, okay, let's see what we got here. Oops, relaunch the poll, and we'll see what else we have. Oh, okay, there's the answer to schizophrenia is the same as split personality. That is definitely false, as you well know. And, oh, okay, this is another one on treatment. A man has a fear of heights. A therapist who uses the technique called flooding would do what? This was something I covered, those of you in my Monday class today saw it today, so it should be fresh in your repertoire. Now, it looks like 4 out of 11 people have put in something here. And again, I don't give you a word and ask you to give me the definition. I give you, what flooding, and tell me which of the following things here is an example of flooding. And it looks like we're up to 8 people have answered so far out of the 11. So I'm going to end the poll and let you see how people voted, those of you in the recording. 6 out of, whoops, let me share it with the people who are here today. 6 out of 11 said that, or 6 out of 8, sorry, said that flooding would involve take him to the top of a mountain. Yeah, I mean, uh, flooding gives the maximum level of exposure right at the start. Maybe we take him by helicopter or something to the top of a mountain. We don't even let him climb up the thing. We just, boom, up you go. And that's very different than the other alternatives here of encouraging him to think of other things. That would be distraction. Present him with many relaxing stimuli at one time. That's just an answer I made up. Probe the origins of this fear in early childhood. That might be a little bit of psychoanalysis, but it's not going to help him today. He eventually, if he has a fear of heights, has to experience those heights. But like I said in class, I don't like the idea of flooding somebody. I like baby steps, systematic desensitization, where we give them a little bit of it at a time. Um, there you can see that the correct answer for this question was flooding would involve take them to the top of a mountain. Okay. Somehow, oops, let me relaunch the poll here so that you can vote on this one. And therapy techniques that are used to modify disordered behaviors through the principles of learning are called what kind of therapies? So we're using principles of learning. Oh, and we're modifying what? Maybe that's going to help you to take a look at as well. Modifying disordered behaviors. I think I just gave you a hint. So it looks like 2 out of 11. We're up to 3 now. And now we're up to 7 out of 11 have put in a vote. And interesting separation here. So let me end the poll. Let's just kind of see how people have voted. And those of you on the recording, let's see, 4 out of 7 voted for number 1, cognitive therapy, and 3 voted for behavioral therapy. And check the board, as Steve Harvey would say, I think. Survey says behavioral is actually the correct answer. We're modifying disordered behaviors. Now, if we were modifying disordered, well, in fact, let me pose it to you in the chat area. What does cognitive therapy look at? What do we try to help people change using cognitive therapy? Yeah, thoughts. Thanks, Kristen, Ryan. I see Sarah's question there. You joined a little late. I don't have my schedule. I'm at home right now. And I will, if you're still wondering tomorrow, email me tomorrow just to check on that. But maybe, is there anybody else here from Tuesday, Thursday, 9:30 class? Chris, no. Corinne is in that class. Johanna's here someplace, I think. Is our test on Thursday, May 3rd. Maybe Johanna can help us out here. Because I have 7 exams, so I didn't. Oh, okay. Yes, Sarah, I see an answer there. Thank you, Tricia, for. Okay, yeah, you're kind of seeing what's going on. So, okay. Anyway, Kristen and Ryan answered the question that cognitive therapy, we take a look at changing people's beliefs or thoughts. Behavioral therapy works at changing people's behaviors. Psychoanalytic therapy looks at people's past. Boy, we can't change your past, though, can we? One of my quotes is, even God doesn't change your past. So that's why I don't use psychoanalytic ideas too much. Humanistic therapy just kind of says, be all you can be. It doesn't really tell us how to do therapy very well. So the correct answer for this question, though, the techniques used to modify disordered behaviors like fears, um, through principles of learning. Oh, did I talk about reinforcement? I think that's one of those principles of learning from chapter 6. Yeah, Kim, yours is a different day. There are people from all different sections here today. So if you see somebody post in a chat area when their final is and it's different than yours, that's true. I've been putting up on the board when your final exam is for your particular section. Okay, let's see what I've got here. Um, oh, okay, another something. What should you look for when seeking professional help? What do you think is the most important of these 5 different things if you're looking for professional help? And I think I made a pretty big deal of it. And it looks like 5 out of 11, 6 out of 11 so far have put in a response here. What's the, I would say, what's a very important thing to look for? And looks like our typical 7 out of 11 have put in a response. And so I'm going to stop the poll and let you see that, in fact, most of you chose, in fact, all of you chose number 1, licensure. And that is, in fact, oops, I guess it was the correct answer. There it is. Licensure number 1. For some reason, when I made the next slide, I reversed them all around. You can see the difference there. But yeah, low cost is not important. I mean, like I said in class, if you can't pay or can't afford it, oftentimes we can figure out a way to make it happen through a sliding scale. I don't think your therapist has to be the same gender as you. I've worked with many women, many men. I've worked with people in the gay community, gay men, lesbian women. So I don't think it has to be a complete, same culture as you. I don't think so. I've worked with people of Amish background, Spanish. I think I had somebody of Russian background, actually. I had somebody who was deaf. That was a challenge. But even if I'm not of the same culture, it would be helpful, though, if I know some certain things about your culture before I start treating you or working with you, or maybe I'll ask you to explain things about your culture. But I don't think we have to be of the same. But licensure is pretty important. Like I said, it protects you from some abuses. Ironically, today in the mail, I got my license from the state sent to me that I paid for back in November. So the state is only 5 months behind. Okay, I pulled up a new question here, so let me give you a chance to answer it. And electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, has been shown to be effective with people who had schizophrenia, were anxious, were severely depressed, were normal. Who do we use it for? I think this should be an easy one. Looks like 3 out of 11 have put in a response. We're up to 5 already. Okay, and Ryan just put up when Lancaster campus 12:30 class is, our final is 1 o'clock on May 7th. So again, if you're not in my Lancaster campus class, didn't see me today in class, that's not the date and time for your final. If you're Tuesday, Thursday, we've had a couple of people in that kind of situation. So, okay, looks like 7 out of 11 have voted. Everybody voted for the correct answer, which is, as you can see, if you're on the recording, yeah, severe depression. It's not used for people with schizophrenia. I did not see it used at Wernersville State Hospital in that way, but I did see it used for people who were severely depressed. And like I described, my old fourth grade squeeze, more of a crush. I didn't know what squeezing was about in fourth grade. But anyway, fourth grade crush, she said she got a significant benefit out of electric shock therapy. So, okay, let's see. Oh, some therapies can be harmful. Easy true or false here. What do you think? Some therapies can be harmful. And looks like 4 people have put in a response so far. We're up to 6, and everybody's choosing the same possibility. So I'm going to show you the share the results here, and as you can see, those of you here live, and 6 out of 6 who answered, 100% of you chose number 1, true, and that is in fact true. This is why I think you need to go to a licensed and well-trained professional. In one of my courses, one of my professors was on the state ethics board, and he said they got a complaint about a therapist in, I'll just say northern Pennsylvania, who was using a very unusual type of therapy. Do not Google this, okay? Because you're going to get all sorts of porno sites if you do this. But the therapist, and I have no idea how he was implementing it, or she, I think it was a he, but they were using what was referred to as butt plug therapy. Do not ask me what that involves. I have no knowledge of it, and I don't want to know either. But I am hoping that that therapist, whomever they were, lost their license, because that sounds way, way, way out there, to tell you the truth. So, yeah, some therapies can be harmful. I think we looked at flooding as a possible harmful kind of thing. Also, if somebody uses one type of therapy that's ineffective for the problem the person has, I think the person, I mean, if they're severely depressed and suicidal and somebody uses some type of therapy that just is not meant for somebody who's depressed and suicidal, the person could kill themselves. And in that sense, the therapist has created a terrible tragedy. So, okay, let me clear the poll. And, actually, what other questions do you guys have? I'm looking at the chat area here and seeing if anything is on your mind that I could explain further. I think I did say in class, chapters 15 and 16 are highly represented on the exam. The test will have 51 questions, so you could actually get 102%, just like usual. There is one ABBA, just for fun, um, just to kind of keep your interest going there. And I'm still keeping an eye on the chat area. Again, I hope this has been helpful. If you want to leave feedback on RateMyProfessor.com, go ahead. In fact, there's the link. I think it's a live link. You could probably click on it if you felt like it. I'm not sure if that'll work for the people who watch this as a recording. By the way, that picture at the top was taken while I was completely sober. I think I was at a wedding reception where there was no alcohol, which was good, and just having a good time. So anyway, keep an eye on the chat here. How many questions per chapter? Cool picture, yeah. Sarah, your flattery will get you everywhere. Anyway, couple questions there. How many questions per chapter? Most questions are from chapter 15 and 16 in response to Constance, her question there. But there are still questions on chapters 13 and 14. Do I really read it? Yeah, actually I do. I do read Rate My Professor. My joke is I'm tired of writing my own ratings, so I need students to put a few in, which is something to keep in mind. I mean, I didn't really put in any ratings or stuff, but isn't it possible, well, it's kind of like the Russians and trolls and all that other stuff. There may not have been collusion, but I do believe there was some hanky-panky going on when it came to Facebook and all that other stuff. And who knows, maybe Rate My Professor, I think I'm able to delete things that are not favorable to me, which I have never done. If somebody wants to criticize me, I look at it seriously. If they tell me I use crude language, I probably continue using crude language. But actually, I have made some changes based on feedback from RateMyProfessor.com, and yeah, I do really read it. So, not seeing any other things here. I have had a very busy semester commuting to York, teaching 2 sections there. Love you people over there who are here tonight or watching this on the recording. It's been a little exhausting, but still, I like what I'm doing. I like you guys as students, and I do, more than anything, hope you learned something about psychology for this semester. Thanks, Tricia. I like what I'm doing, and I hope it shows. And I'm glad to have been able to come over. Tricia's over in New York, for those of you who don't know. I'm glad to have been able to go over there and I don't know, kind of mingle with you guys for a little while. Yeah, Sarah, you're a York one as well. I appreciate it. You guys, you know, you're in my heart. So I just like what I'm doing, and I'll keep doing it for a few more years. If you want to take Psych 213, though, you're going to have to come over to Lancaster in the fall, because that's the only place I'll be teaching in the fall. And okay, yeah, thanks, Ryan. Actually, I don't think the class was all that quiet. So that was my 12:30, right after lunch class, and people's energy seems to sag a little bit around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but that's okay. Anyway, I'm going to sign off now. I'll be posting the recording in a little bit for those of you who may have joined late, or if you're having trouble sleeping and want to put this on so you can go to sleep, go ahead. And I will see everybody at the final. So thank you for being a good class, all of you. And I've enjoyed it. So I will see you. Take care.